Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Data Playbook. Here we're going through the Week 10 Sunday games, so let's get into the next preview. Getting into our next game, you have the Giants going to Chicago, where Chicago's favored on the money line with a spread of 4.5 and a total line of 46.5. And then if I switch over to the averages while we look at the rankings, since these should compare to the rankings, you have the Giants with about an average offense, maybe a little bit below, passing rank of 19, a little below average, rushing rank about average. Unfortunately, that might be pulled up still from Cam, even though he's gone now at this point. So we'll have to see if they can continue holding on to that rank of 14 here. And otherwise, they're still pretty bad at scoring for themselves. Defensively, they're pretty bad as well. One of the worst at stopping their opponents from scoring. They also are one of the worst at allowing rushing in the league. They're pretty bad at stopping the pass. If there's one silver lining, they're at least much better at stopping tight ends than they are at overall passing. For the Bears, they're pretty good offensively with a scoring rank of 6, a passing rank of 10, a rushing rank of 2, so second best in the league at rushing. They do lack with their tight ends at 21. However, defensively, they are pretty bad with an allowed scoring rank of 29, so they're pretty bad at stopping their opponents. Allowed passing rank of 23, allowed rushing rank of 25, so across the board about the bottom third defensively. If we look into the quarterbacks next, you have Jackson Dart and Caleb Williams, with Jackson Dart averaging 16.7 fantasy points per game and Caleb Williams averaging 19.6. Jackson Dart has 3 interceptions this season, with 1 fumble lost due to a sack, and Caleb Williams only has 4 passing interceptions this season. And then here's their averages and their breakdowns if you need that, as well as their carry share, where we can see that Jackson Dart gets about 20% of the team's total carry share. And here with Russell Wilson still dropping off a little bit with 6.3, just kind of an interesting note. Cam over here with 39.7%, so we'll have to see how this mixes up with their new running back situation. Over here for Chicago, you have Caleb Williams getting 18.2% of the team's total carry share, with most of that going to DeAndre Swift. So just to continue looking at the ground game, you have Tyrone Tracy and DeAndre Swift as your running backs. Tracy averages 6.5 fantasy points per game this season, while DeAndre Swift has averaged almost 16 fantasy points per game this season. However, the only turnover comes from DeAndre Swift with 1 rushing fumble. And then we'll just move over to our averages and look at the carry share, with Tyrone Tracy getting almost 20%, 19.7% of the team's total carry share. Again, slowly probably eating into Cam Scabos if we were to track that. And then over here with Chicago, as mentioned before, DeAndre Swift getting 45.5% of the team's total carry share, with almost 31% going to the backup Kyle Monange, I think is how you say his name. Moving into the receiving game, you have Wandale Robinson and Rome Odunze as your number 1 receivers, with Robinson averaging 12.5 fantasy points per game and Rome averaging 13.5. With no turnovers between the two of them, we go to our averages. And then to look at the receiving share, you have Wandale Robinson with 26.9% of the team's total receiving share. That is the largest chunk out of anybody else on the team. And over here with Rome Odunze, he gets 24.1% of the team's total receiving share, which is also the largest of anybody else on the team. And then with the number 2 receivers, you have Darius Slayton and DJ Moore, with Slayton averaging 6.1 fantasy points per game and DJ Moore averaging 11.5. There's 1 turnover that comes from Slayton with a receiving fumble, and otherwise here's your averages. And we look at Darius Slayton's percentage share of receiving yards with 12.6%. That's pretty close to second, although there's a couple other guys that are also about that same amount. And over here with DJ Moore, he gets 20.5% of the team's total receiving share, which is the second largest share of anybody else on the team. Finally, with the tight ends, you have Theo Johnson and Colston Loveland. Because Cole Kmet is out, Johnson has averaged 8.9 fantasy points per game this season, and Colston Loveland has averaged 7.5 average fantasy points when he's in. With no turnovers to note, we'll move to the averages and look at the receiving share, with Theo Johnson getting 11.9% of the team's total receiving share, and Colston Loveland over here getting 11.9 as well percent of the team's total receiving share. That is kind of interesting with Colston Loveland getting a much larger percentage here than I think his counterpart with Cole Kmet. I think at 7.3 down here, about 7.3% of the team's total receiving share. So this could be a long-fought game between the two of them. I do agree that it looks like Chicago's the most poised to win this game with a good scoring rank here against a team that allows quite a bit of scoring. But if Jackson Dart can figure it out and start passing all over them, maybe they can score quite a bit as well and keep up. It may really come down to this allowed rushing rank of 31 here by New York and a rushing rank of 2 by the Bears. So the Bears may just be able to rush it all over New York no matter what New York wants to do, and it will just become a game of catch up from New York. So that's kind of what it looks like from the numbers here, but I guess we'll see how the game turns out. So that's all I have for this game today. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like and subscribe, and leave a comment on what else you might want to see in the future. Other than that, thank you so much for watching.